Yeah, it's really hard to know overall because it's just kind of opinion's hard to grasp, especially when it's like mixed, which proportions, which way or the other, especially when you realize how many, I guess, how many different perspectives you have. Like, am I not seeing a lot of perspectives because of where I look, or am I seeing like, basically, am I in an echo chamber of sorts, which can kind of happen even in like the subreddit. It can happen just because of how the subreddits are designed to work with upvotes and downvotes. So it is interesting seeing Dragonflight actually kind of pick up a little bit of steam. People go, oh, okay, yeah, sure. But there's also a lot of like pretty like new, pretty good like reviews coming from beta and stuff recently.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are having fun with the talent trees and all the classes on pre-patch. And usually I think if people can go into a pre-patch and go, oh, hey, this is like, these new systems are fun. And people are like, hey, well, let's try the default UI instead of add-ons for a bit. It can breathe a bit of life back in. And I think I'm still mixed on how overall it'll go, but I think Dragonflight's looking pretty damn solid. Pretty solid.
Yeah. I think maybe the one piece of the puzzle that they don't have is a launch event like Legions.
Yeah.
That's the one thing they don't have. I guess for a lot of people playing Drakthir and stuff, that will all be fun. But some sort of big, crazy thing, I think... Well, we've never really got something like Legion since, right? So, yeah. That said, maybe the version that we'll get will actually be a bit more fun than people's reports from testing. Which were kind of, that was like a little bit, just kind of meh. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It overall seems like things are turning around. Like, certainly we've started to notice that content that is related to playing the game is starting to do pretty well in just its own Steam. I think that's one of the really important indicators for how something's being perceived. A little bit with lore and stuff. Like, there's today's video, which never would have done well, really, because it's not like an insane breaking news thing. But it's been like mixed with the other aspects of lore videos. I think we'll know if Blizzard are significantly, I guess have really clawed people back if after like 1 or 2 Dragonflight patches, that side of the content starts to do well. I think the gameplay content that's very related to people, they want to play the game. They're maybe not sold on it just yet. They're maybe not fully invested just yet. So they want to watch a video about maybe things they should do before the expansion. Maybe they want to learn what classes are looking good, that kind of thing. The deeper engagement will come after they've actioned on that and they've stuck around for long enough within the game to care a bit more.
Yeah, well, this is...
I guess it all goes back to the damage that Blizzard did over 4 years and how that could potentially be undone.
Yeah, because it is like, obviously we've been talking about Dragonflight for a long time. The beta's been up for like 4 or 5 months now. And it's like, okay, well, there's a lot to know and a lot of like kind of, oh, hey, how is Dragonflight looking? But I think this is still, Blizzard are showing hints of what is effectively an apology tour, in a sense, an apology and comeback tour. So it's like they're trying to sell tickets, but people won't have actual reviews or people won't actually, buy the merch until they've been to the tour and seen that it's actually good. In that sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you can't expect people to forgive mistakes without having actually felt it. And that's where I think that's where I'm most mixed. Because on paper, with an awful lot of the decisions they've made and a lot of how Dragonflight feels to play, a lot of those players that come back will go, okay, this is more or less what we asked for. But the problem is, will they emotionally feel that it's what they asked for? And it's, will it recapture the magic that basically, will it like resume the spell that Shadowlands broke and the end of BFA, I guess? Because that's one of the things that World of Warcraft had this incredible like Enrapture spell cast on so many people. And then they made enough mistakes to actually break that and get people to go elsewhere or just leave MMOs entirely. And that's a problem. Like, they need to be... I think they can capture some of those people back, but for people who have really, truly, like, that spell is destroyed, they're going to have to go pretty hard to actually recast the whole thing, especially now there's so much more competition in the space, and a lot of the players are naturally older and are going to be a lot more kind of not as easy to grab the attention of when every other part of being alive now knows how to grab your attention eternally.
I suppose that's what's interesting, because you can maybe think, oh, they could not have chosen a worse time to have 2 expansions of failure, of ego, of not listening to people.
Exactly.
You could say that, and I guess if it had have happened a few years before, you would maybe say it would open them up to a period of more weakness, right? Because maybe you've got WildStar, or I don't know, Age of Reckoning, right? All those other MMOs, because like that was the era of the WoW killer MMOs, which all, of course, failed to kill WoW.
All of which died.
This being, as in 2016 through to 2022, being nearly the worst time that Blizzard could have shot themselves in most of their limbs and then their head with how they ran the game. That's the worst time, because it just reflects how much more engaging and just how much content the rest of like just the gaming industry as a whole was able to output.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so yeah, it's weird. The competition didn't really come from other MMOs, right? Like, it's not New World and Lost Ark, I think, that's hurting World of Warcraft. It's a bit of that.
I would say Lost Ark definitely more so, because where World of Warcraft is, I think, most vulnerable is its least unique elements, which is the fact that it's good for sweaty live service gameplay.
Yeah,
I think Lost Ark,
that's the newer players.
Yeah, the newer players, Lost Ark probably stole a lot of those when Shadowlands sucked to play from that gameplay perspective. And that's what they're kind of worried. But it's like most of what I'm mostly concerned about is like the older style of player, the one who more matches how I've always traditionally like loved World of Warcraft. And that is as this MMO with this incredible like deep lore, and the experience of being in the world is fantastic. And that's the idea of like, good luck getting this back. Like,
yeah, that's the thing that they've got to double down on.
Yeah,
I suppose. I don't think they're double down on it, but they're perhaps doing a better job of it now.
Yeah, it's now will people feel that when they play is the question. Because I had this massive like problem playing through the Dragonflight campaign going, this is all really good, and I know this is really like, this is actually good, this world is really well built, there's lots of fun to be had everywhere. Are people primed to feel that?
And that's what I guess is also interesting. I'm beginning to think, like when you look at reactions to lots of media out there right now, sometimes it is... I don't want to say it's divorced from the quality of the media itself, because it's not. The quality of the media itself is obviously a fairly large part of it. But I think like with maybe some of how society and culture is going, and I don't know, maybe it was actually the same for us back in the day, just that it was people arguing over, PS3 or Xbox 360 in school. But it seems to me like opinions are becoming more and more connected to identity. And I guess it's like the same, I don't know, maybe that's some of that same thing that like, like culture war bullshit kind of has going on. Maybe it's what happens when you run the experiment of YouTube and Twitter and Reddit and all of these platforms for like 15 years. And, people kind of suddenly... they engage with the things that they enjoy or don't enjoy in a very different way. And like, I don't know. It feels like watching the slow motion train wreck of every piece of IP is a really large thing now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's almost not enough to be, just pretty good. You have to like utterly blow someone's socks off with how good it is, because maybe like a resistance to change. Maybe that's it. Maybe like opinions are more strongly held these days or something.
Yeah. There's a number of factors there. It's like the idea that people talk about like living in a post-truth world is like, that's very specifically used to talk about how, narratives can be spun. And usually it's used in like a kind of anti-journalism or like a political kind of spectrum. But it also like, that is like a cultural thing where it doesn't matter what the truth is. It's about how people feel more than it is about how good a game is. And that's a thing where there are undoubtedly parts of Shadowlands that were like actually good in isolation, but the whole thing, the whole experience was bad. And then when the whole experience felt bad and then people started to talk about it feeling bad, then that was like super, like absolutely nailed there. They, like, no matter what they did with 9.2, it wouldn't have saved Shadowlands, because Shadowlands, the very like word itself was poisoned and meant bad. and rightfully so, because it didn't respect players whatsoever.
It could not have been a 9.2. It had to be a Reaper of Souls.
Exactly.
Right? Like with Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls was good enough to win it back. But then Morheim, the leadership team, they didn't have enough confidence in that to greenlight the second expansion. So I guess it's like that with patch 9.2. It would have needed to have been like kind of transformational. Yeah. Way beyond the scope of what it probably ever could have been.
And that's why I think that Dragonflight can't save World of Warcraft, but it'll have to save itself over a very long period of time. And it'll have to maybe, this is interesting, because I remember reading somewhere something about the fire of self-discovery only burns what you're not. And I think World of Warcraft's going to have to walk through that fire to see what it is, see what about Dragonflight actually works really well, what they can do. And maybe a lot of players will have to just leave because they can't actually capture them back with what they can realistically do. But they will have to like decide on what it actually wants to be and who it wants to market itself towards overall. And that'll probably be like kind of difficult, but it should mean a pretty decent and healthy game. It just means that people who maybe don't like the creative direction it's going will just have to look elsewhere, because there's no way that this, like, and this is kind of coming back to like the whole rose-tinted goggles thing of classic and everything. Is like, you can't recapture that experience, and anyone who wants to recapture that experience is just going to be perennially frustrated by it. So it's kind of awkward. Think of this as like as a whole product and how it ever gets back to many millions of subscribers, as opposed to the couple of million at most. Yeah, you start to get into that. Like, is this even feasible?
I guess that's what's weird, because it's like, I mean, we've all changed for sure, and we were all able to have a lot more love and put up with a lot more bullshit in the past, right? Like, you know, maybe aspects of the game in the past that were like kind of frustrating or stupid. I mean, imagine if a classic or TBC class balance was the norm right now. Like a lot of things that, where it is really bizarre, because you look at those things in the context of classic and TBC, and they ended up, there was an emergent meta, you know, that these things came together in. But nowadays, the expectation there is very, very different. And I guess a lot of this is down to thinking like, what's the X factor that lets people kind of put up with the bullshit, so the game then kind of like settles itself, and there's just enough content, and people are like, yeah, well, I like the experience of being here. I like the adventure, so I'm going to keep on playing. I guess that's the really challenging thing for Blizzard. It's not really about, well, that's it. It's not really about features, is it? It's like, and it is a bit about features, because features would maybe help them recapture this X factor, but it's not about features. World of Warcraft, I mean, you know, you look at its greatest period of time, the feature of World of Warcraft was that it was World of Warcraft, right?
World of Warcraft was always a vibe.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking about.
It was an emotional state that you were in, and that's why that's so hard to recapture. And that's why, and I'm not going to go on about it because I could, because I played it for 36 hours this week, but Harvestella is a piece of shit. And that game is wonderful because it knows exactly how to get, hey, we want you to be in this emotional state. Is the game pretty bad in a lot of ways? Yes. Is it also like full, this is a bad game, but I love it to pieces because it's so perfect vibes? Exactly that. And that's where World of Warcraft needs to try to get that, but how that's even feasible is really scuffed. And that's because World of Warcraft was, for most people who played MMOs, the first virtual world they lived in.
Yeah.
And World of Warcraft can never be a virtual world again, because the literal like society and culture is now changed, and it does not have that on its own. So it's like, it sounds like I'm kind of being doomerism around it.
Are you saying that World of Warcraft was the two-dimensional metaverse?
No, it was the first real version of a metaverse that got anywhere close to what people think of a metaverse.
Or like, the massive quantity of players, like versus the mods and stuff.
There were MMOs before that, but World of Warcraft was the one that was like, oh, people live and work in World of Warcraft enough for this to be like a cultural thing. Holy shit, that's kind of crazy, actually. But now World of Warcraft has to contend with not being World of Warcraft anymore. It has to contend with being a live service game.
Yeah.
But people look at World of Warcraft and see the name World of Warcraft and think of what World of Warcraft is. They don't think, oh, it's just a game like Destiny. It's just a game like FF14. It's just a game like, I guess, Apex as well, or Overwatch. And that's the problem, because that's what it is. But it used to be more. And it's technically impossible to be more again. But it has to try and find the line of how can it emulate what it was in terms of being a vibe as opposed to just a game.
Yeah, like I think a lot of FF14's success, in that it has a core group of players who stick around outside of just locking in for the new MSQ stuff. It's able to achieve that vibe.
Yep. Even
Even though there are definitely ways where you could say, like, people could say it's not massively content rich outside of MSQ stuff, or, you know.
well, those people are continually been proven wrong every single live letter. They have new features.
Yeah, that's true, but there's a lot of things that people do in that game that only really work because it manages to get that weird imperceptible
Oh yeah,
vibe.
they're emergent. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's bizarre. How does WoW get back there? I'm not really that sure, but it seems like they're trying to build the world as hard as they can with this expansion. I think that's definitely going to be part of it.
Yeah, this kind of all of that talk came out of the idea of it being like a lore-rich world and how people respond to the lore and feel and like care about the world itself. And I think that's where they're going right in Dragonflight largely. Story-wise, it's going to be a big question mark. We'll see how people react to some of the later parts of the max level campaign. But fundamentally, in terms of, hey, we've got characters and world as character and factions as character, as opposed to here's, you know, the leader of a faction, that's it. It's like you go to the Centaur and there's actually like a ton of named characters that all kind of speak and have their own part, and they're like clearly represented as smaller groups, as opposed to like the Night Fae, where it's here's the Winter Queen and then there's like a couple of named NPCs that don't really do a whole pile. Right. Oh, interesting. Same with like the Kyrian being kind of just, it's one story as opposed to a load of little things. Very interesting that they're actually making that way, making it better in that sense, which I think is very good. But we'll see how people respond, because that's again. I think they'll all be worried as well, and I'm always worried for them, the dev team, seeing how their game launches and go, we think we've made what people want. We've tried to make what people want. We have made what people want, but will they want it when it gets to their plate? That's the question. Because it's not like, you know, obviously I said plate, so food analogy. It's not like you go to the restaurant and go, hello, I'd like burger, please. And then the devs in the kitchen go, this isn't hard. Burger. Make burger, bring out burger. There you go, it's burger. But in this weird world, the material they use to make food is actually entirely perceptually controlled by the people who look at it. So they've put together a burger and they're like, we're pretty sure that looks like a burger. But then under the weird lighting and the weird perception of the customer, they're like, that's not a burger. You've just made a pizza. What are you doing? I didn't ask for that. Yeah. Okay, so if you follow, let me know.
So in this world, we've asked the chef for a burger, and he made a fucking pizza.
But he thinks it's a burger, and it is a burger to him.
Because it's a post-truth society.
Because it's a post-truth society. And
Burger's whatever you want it to be.
Exactly. You can tell it's been a very long and interesting week, can't you? Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, let's move on.